No one in this world can you trust. Not men, not women, not beasts. This you can trust.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Glory of Golden State Gaming. I'm your host, Swamp Swimmer, and with me, as always, the Jack to my Beanstalk, Vespacian.
Okay, that's an interesting one.
Quick note about those is I got a big old list of them from Caps, and that was one of his. So if you don't like that one, blame Caps. Don't blame me.
Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Anyway, so a little something different we can discuss at the beginning of these videos. A small piece of tabletop strategy in the Ninth Age. What do you look for in army spell selection, and in what order do you cast your spells during the game? And I'm talking about general strategy, so let me go first. My general strategy is I want redundancy in spells. That's why in my Beast Herd list, all my spells basically help me wound or help me get through armor, which spells can do either one of those. And then when I'm casting, do you like to roll the big spell that you want first with the amount of dice you have, or do you want to cast it last? I usually cast my bound spells. Well, what do I do actually? You know what I do when I'm playing Beast Herds in this load? I do the big spell first, and then let my opponent decide if he wants to stop it or not, and then I fill in with those bound spells, and try to make him exhaust all of his dice in the first to spell. That's my strategy. What about you?
Yeah, I think in list building, I like to look at a few different things. I like to look at a certain, like kind of a threshold. I think that 5 spells is sort of the bare minimum. I think I like to prefer to be in the sort of like 6 to 7 range, I would say. Whereas if I have more than that, I start to feel like I'm over investing. And then I do like to look at redundancy. You kind of think about game phase, right? So in the early phase of the game, I'm an elf T3, no defense. So I would like to have like 2 to 3 spells that I can use for defending my units to get them across the table typically, and or be able to reach out and touch, with like a ranged missile or something like that. So I want to have 2 to 3 spells in that, ideally 3 in that initial phase of the game to make dispel priority difficult, and then same thing in the combat phase. I don't necessarily think about them as having to be redundant of what they do, but just redundant of timing of when I'm going to cast them, right? So like you can either let me get up in an offensive spell or a defensive spell, either way, but as long as they're competing in that phase of the game.
Yeah, it makes sense. Actually, I think it's stark differences between I'm a combat list with my Beast Herds, and you're much the mix arms list with your Highborn Elves, and the spells match. Because really in the first turn or two, my magic does very little. But then when I get into combat, it does a lot.
Yeah. And I think that's also, it kind of goes back to, like with elves, the big deal is that they go first, right? So front loading the damage is big, but also surviving the response, right? So in a way, because keeping more elves alive allows me to attack better the following turn, because I'll undoubtedly go first. It kind of makes defensive spells in a way have a kind of an offensive element to them, right? Because it boosts my damage in the following turn, so whereas yours is a little bit more about just like when you get to hit that it's an irresistible amount of damage, right? So anyways, no, I think it's a good question. And then in terms of this spell prioritization, I think this is something I've been thinking about. I actually was talking to some people, because I think it'd be really interesting to hear people talk through it and kind of critique, because I think there's so many variables that go into it. One is the phase itself, right? So
Yeah.
in a two phase, right? Where the dice difference is very small, right? That dictate, like I might cast a big spell early because the dispel prioritization is obvious, right? Other times when I feel like there's multiple spells that I could cast that are really difficult, right? Then I'm looking into like ability to cast, right? Is it easy to cast this or not? One of my biggest fears, I think the thing that kills a phase is casting a critical spell early and failing it. Because then you run into the situation where one, you've probably lost your dice advantage, and two, your opponent can start to take risks because the big deals cast is gone, right? So that I think a lot of time people go with very, very safe amounts of dice in dispelling because they're just so scared of letting something go through with a bad roll. And I think that changes if people can start taking risks. I mean, you can dispel a 3-4 dice cast with 2 dice if they roll low enough, so that just makes the phase really, really hard. So I tend to wait for that big spell to the end, so that then if they've held all their dice and I fail it, then at least we're both hard up. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's an interesting this was a suggestion from one of our viewers that we, in these little intro sections of our video, talk about general areas of strategy in the game. So I think this is a success. I think we'll do this again in the future.
Cool. Great recommendation, whoever it was. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was. Brain fart. I'm a horrible person, but we'll get there. But let's get on to the game. Round 2 of Sactown Smackdown 2022. I in the previous video, I had a big win in round 2. Took me to 31 points total. You're sitting on 19 after round 1. And you get paired into Rex, a longtime player who played back in the day of 8th edition. Recently, really full force went into 9th Age, so we're really glad to have him in the group. But he's also bringing out the brand new KOE, which is really exciting. I think this is the first battle report we have with the new KOE list, which I'm excited to hear about. If you are interested in Vespacian's list or Rex's or anyone else's in the tournament, click the link right above my head. It is our list review of all the lists in the tournament, and you can get a little more deeper explanation in these lists, or what we think of them at least. But let's see here. Rex's list. You want to go ahead and go through it?
Yeah, and I just don't think it's time effective to go try to get through exactly what every one of these things does. But basically, he's got the super killy, has a like 21 or 28 wound potential output on the charge, Divine Judgment, Duke. So this guy on a Hippogriff. So this guy is like I think 4-up Aegis all the time. Black Knight's Tabard, so he comes back to life after the last wound, and he is 7 strength 7 divine, whatever attacks on, with multi-wound D3 or D3 plus 1 on the charge. So for my 2,200 points of dragons, not a great model to see across the table. And then he's got another guy that breaks weapons with the Tristans, and push and strength. So also, something I don't want my BSB into with the Nova Flare. He's gone pretty magic light with a Div Adept with the Heirloom. So I think that means that he's got 3 spells. So pretty magic light, and then he's got a few big bricks of knights, sort of like one of each, the sort of regular core knights, the Knights Resplendent and the Knights of the Quest, and then a Sacred Reliquary to make that big unit of Lowborn Levies, really tanky, and then 2 Scorpions, which I also don't love with my dragons, and a unit of Chaff. So I think I think this is a pretty solid list build. I think this is going to probably converge to being, the sort of net list or something close to it, pending any changes, design.
Yeah, I agree with that.
blah, blah, blah.
This is a strong list. It's got some great combos, and I think it's a kind of scary list for your army to face in particular. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I had this up, I think, as a yellow, mainly because I think I can kind of play a game denial type of game against this list, because the dragons can run. I don't have a lot of big points anywhere else, so hiding, running, trying to pick up points where I can. I think if I kind of deny the game, it's hard for Rex to get a big win, basically.
Okay. Let's see here. Our first picture is deployment.
Yeah, so Rex won the roll for sides. A couple things I should point out, because they're pretty important, is the terrain. So we've got some big game impacting terrain pieces here. So we've got 2 hills, that kind of grayish tiered thing on the left with the dice in the middle of it, and then that brownish thing with the little tent sort of hut on top, and then the big purple on the left hand side is also impassable. So 3 big pieces of impassable terrain. There's one more small piece of impassable in the upper right. There's kind of like a circle. Yeah, there it is. That one right there. And then field and forest, pretty self-explanatory. And I think there's a ruins sort of up in Rex's upper left there. And I think that's about, there might be like a water feature in the bottom right, but it doesn't come into play. So lots of terrain. Rex won the pick for sides, and he deployed, and he picked that side over there. Then with marching columns, that meant that we had to drop 3 before anybody could drop for first. I think both Rex and I were kind of thinking the same thing, which was that this was going to be a game of like big zones and kind of dancing around. And so I dropped everything for first turn after the first 3 drops. And I think Rex made kind of the first mistake here, which was that he put 2 scoring units. Remember, this is capture the flags, right? So he put 2 scoring units, one the knights in the upper right, and the other the lowborn archers in the center. Those were his first 3 drops, right? So that my perspective on that is that sort of gave me a 2-0 edge on the objective, right? Because I think I can get both of those units.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I dropped, you can see my deployment from right to left. You've got my vanguarded reavers up behind the hill there. You've got the alchemy mage, the Nova commander on the green dragon, the Grey Watchers, and then the lions in the center. And then the scouted Grey Watchers up in the field there, the spears and the Pyromaster next to there, and then in the bottom left you see my Lancers, and I think I have the other little Lancer brick is out of frame on the right, kind of on the edge of the board. And so Rex had dropped his 3, the yeomen, the core knights, and the archers, and then he dropped everything else kind of in the corner, essentially denying me the ability to get after those scorpions early, and kind of creating a broad zone around that hill to prevent me from making any aggressive moves, I guess. So yeah, that was deployment, and like I said, I felt like after deployment I had a pretty strong advantage on the objective, which I think my kind of game plan was kill those 2 scoring units and withdraw, essentially, for like a 13-15 win. That was the goal.
It's not a bad plan. I think that's a good call for your army. So I'm excited to see how it goes. I'm going to the next photo here. This is end of top of 1.
Yeah, so you can see he's kind of just starting his movement phase. So sorry for the timing of the picture there, but essentially what I did was I pulled. Let's go left to right. So I pulled the Lancers over to get out of line of sight of the Scorpions and out of range of anything that could see them. I brought the dragon into the lee of the hill so that I could zone him kind of coming around and up onto the hill if there were decent targets, but also get myself within 24-inch range of those archers. And that were in the forest, were being the keyword. And so I've moved the spears up, and my intention for that was I wanted to make it painful for him to just push up 16 to 20 inches first turn, right? Because I think those spears, especially buffed, trade pretty favorably with the basic knight bricks. And so basically this move I felt bought me a turn or two out of his movement. Otherwise, I bring the Grey Watchers up to shoot at the archers in the forest. The lions come up to just prevent him from making aggressive moves with trying to escape with his cavalry, and then I bring everything up around the hill so that all the dragons are either out of range or out of line of sight of the Scorpions, and that is where they will stay the entire game, basically. And that's about it. So in Magic, I take off the archers entirely to the man. So there I am, one up on the objective.
How many guys were in that unit? How many bros?
Like 15 or 16.
Okay, that's still that's a good Magic phase.
Lots of pyro and all the Grey Watcher shots, basically.
Okay.
So yeah. And then we go on to, I can't remember exactly what the next picture is.
This is marked top of 2 move.
Top of 2 move, yeah. So now you can see how Rex reacted, which, my move with the spears had its desired effect. It kept him from just marching fully up onto the hill. So I was happy with that. And now the spears will begin their slow backward march for the rest of the game. I was happy with where the dragon was. From right there, I could cast Enveloping Embers on the big peasant unit on the left and still shoot at stuff and be out of line of sight of his Scorpions and everything. And then the Lancers are now just beginning their long, slow retreat away from everything. I need to keep them alive because of flags. And then I brought the lines up to, on the right to basically kind of continue to pen in his core knights that were over there. I think I made a little bit of a mistake here. I really think I should have just started committing the Alpha Mage around that right-hand hill now. Essentially what I ended up doing was just costing myself a couple of turns. I don't know what I was trying to achieve with their positioning, with his positioning there, but you'll see how the rest of the game plays out. But I basically just think I wasted a turn of his movement there. And then I brought the BSB back just to provide bubble to everything. And in this turn, I think my target priority was basically every turn he was using all his dice to stop Enveloping Embers on the big brick. I think, rightfully so, he was worried that if I depleted them, then I could bring the dragon into the brick and eventually break it. And so he kept dispelling that, which meant that I was just putting everything I had into the night bricks. But Rex was getting really lucky with his Aegis saves and basically just didn't take any damage this turn, including 20 Grey Watchers shooting at those bloody yeomen over there, and I did 0 wounds if I recall correctly. So that was kind of a shame, but otherwise just kind of good positioning, I think.
All right, let's see here. Next, this is top of 4.
Yeah, so apologize. This game is a cagey one, and it just was kind of turns were going quickly, and I just didn't think of the pictures a couple of times. So top of 4. Basically, what you saw from last time is I continue to withdraw the mage, the spears, and the lancers. I brought my reavers over to the left because, at some point I'm going to need to chaff, something. And so I figured it was good to have them available. everything's still out of arc of the scorpions. He fired the scorpions at my spears the entire game, which is a win for me, I think. Now you can see I finally, after wasting, brought him around where he's positioned there. Neither scorpion can see him around the impassable, and between the lions, the commander out of range of the scorpions up on the hill, and the alchemy dragon, I've completely boxed in that other knight unit, which I think is the only other major points I can get. By this point, after I think just some shooting and various assorted other things, I managed to take off those yeomen on the right hand side, so they're gone.
Yes,
too.
I see. They were there.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you can zoom in, but you got to show everybody Rex's lord on Hippogriff over there if you can. Yeah. So he basically has like the guy on a bear, and he's got the two tethered like gigantic eagles. It's such a cool conversion. I love it.
That's awesome.
So
that is really awesome.
Yeah, Rex is a great painter and modeler. So let me see here. So this continues to be KG. He's, I think in this sort of mid game, I was a little surprised he wasn't more aggressive with the Night Bricks. But once again, I guess it just comes back to him being worried about taking charge from the spears, and generally, I think decent zoning from me. So
all right, moving on. This is end of 5. Oh.
Okay. So at this point, a couple of important things have happened. So one, I just by a whisker, I had to leave the Pyro Master in range of a charge from the Divine Duke on Hippo. And so obviously, because nothing had happened basically the entire game, took the charge, obviously. And then he also charged the spears. I fled with him as well. And so at this point, they've now both the dragon and the spears have rallied. I was able to complete my pinning of that knight unit up at the top, and the alchemy dragon and the lancers managed to take it off and overrun off the board. So they're currently sitting off the board at this point. Everything else is pulled back, with the exception of the lions, and I think, hindsight being 2020, my aggressive move with the lions here, I think, was a mistake. I probably just should have kept them back where they were, sort of near that impassable, kind of maintaining my line. But he had given me a place where I could move them forward out of arc of a number of things, which I think maybe caused him to take a less aggressive move this turn than he did. So I was okay at the time, but you'll see what ends up happening. But anyway, so this is my repositioning. At this point, I'm up about 500 or 600 points. I haven't lost anything, and I'm up on the objective. So this was, I think I was sitting at a 15-5 at this point. And so now I think you can see the last picture.
Yeah, this says top of 6.
So here I took advantage of what I thought was a mistake by Rex, which was that he left me a place where the lions could get out of arc of all of his knight units, except for the quest unit there, and out of range of his big halberd or whatever they are, the lowborns up on the hill there. So I really like that, because I think one-on-one, the lions have the bodies to absorb a night charge and then do a bunch of damage back, right? So this would be a way to turn a 15-5 into like a 17 plus, right? So I made that move. And then unfortunately a couple things went against me. One, just because of ranges and positioning, my Grey Watchers had to shoot through the forest at the quests, and they failed to get the miasma off, which is, I think, the only time the entire tournament that happened.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that was a debuff I was counting on in that combat. And then also, with only the 2 alchemy spells, I wasn't able to get the one I wanted off. Rex prioritized spelling it, and so I had Glory of Gold up, which I was relatively happy with, but I would have been happier if I'd been able to put a spike into that unit and taken off, 2 or 3 of them. But anyways, long story short, in Rex's turn, he charges the quest lions. He rolls really well. I roll like crap, which brings back memories of the Chosen Knights in the last game. And I failed to break his rank by 1 body, which means that he auto wins, and I run and he catches me. So big point swing. I do get half points for the quest, so it's not a total loss. But it took it from a 15-5 down to a
13-7.
13-7. Yeah, so it was almost exactly tied on points and an objective win to me.
Interesting. I think
It's a very cagey game in which not a lot happened.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think you stuck to your game plan, which was obviously the right move. You denied his Duke any sort of action. His Duke didn't even get into combat. Yeah, I think those questing knights are a little stronger than people realize. I think they're a pretty damn strong unit. But you're right. I think you should have won that combat. But yeah, just to
Yeah, I could have also. There's a number of things that I probably should have done a little bit differently there. But I think the lions, when they're hitting on 4s, is swingy, right? So if you just roll a little bit below average on the to hit roll, and then he gets some decent. It came down to it. I did like 4 wounds, and he needed to make 1 6-up Aegis out of the 4 wounds to break my steadfast, and he got the 1/6. That's how close it was, right? So if the Grey Watchers had gotten the miasma off, or something like that, that's how close it was, right? So
man, but they were strength 5 AP 3 at the time because they had Glory of Gold, right?
It was strength 6 AP 4 with Glory of Gold, and he had reroll to hit.
Interesting.
Because I stopped distracted.
Interesting.
So he hit really well, which you would on with a reroll to hit. So he hit really well, and I hit poorly. So
all right, well, great game, Rex. This puts you at 13 plus 19. That puts you at a 32, and I'm at a 31 after 2 rounds. So we're both sitting right at the top. I think it was us 2 and 2 other players. We're all at 31, 32, 33. So it came down to the top 2 tables at the end of this tournament. We're both in it. So that's really exciting. We will see my round 3 next time. But hey, if you're watching, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that follow button on Twitch. And we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.